Hello friends, looking at current affairs for 30th March, the news items picked up from the Hindu newspaper are these 15. We'll look at them in detail. The first one, Lok Sabha passes GST bills after marathon debate. So we have been discussing about GST for long now. We have discussed about all the bills also which have been finalized. Now this is the news about passage of these bills. So GST Council was the body set up. You must be knowing the entire history. This GST Council has members from states as well as the center. So the state finance ministers or representative is also there, and the union finance minister is actually the chair here. And the voting share was also 2/3 is with the states and 1/3 with the center. So voting power is also shared like this. Plus decisions, so far majority of the decisions, almost all have been taken by consensus, means all have agreed. But voting is such, what decisions have to be officially passed by the GST Council at least by 3/4 majority. So that is how it is. And this GST Council was set up by 101st Constitutional Amendment Act 2016, which was passed in September 2016. And this created the GST Council as a constitutional body. So it has been given power under Article 279A. So this is a new article inserted into the Constitution for the formation of GST Council. So when this passage of these bills also took place in the Lok Sabha right now, the opposition was questioning that this is disempowering the parliament. So the questions were disempowerment of parliament in setting tax rates, reduction in fiscal autonomy of the states. So the response to this from the finance minister was that this is not so, because the parliament has passed over this authority to the GST Council. So GST Council is having representation from center as well as the states. So this is how it has been done. So now this argument cannot be brought forth. So even tax rate setting will be done by the GST Council. So tax rate, we have already seen 4 tax slabs have been finalized apart from the zero rated goods. So some of the essential commodities like food grains, etc., they would come under zero rated, means they will not be taxed. So this, which commodity to be put under which tax slab, will be decided by a body under the GST Council, and it has to be approved by the GST Council. So that's what they say, that this has been done by authority vested in the GST Council now. Then they are also saying that several tax rates are there. So why, when GST is like one nation, one tax, then why are there several tax slabs? There should be one tax only. So this response to this by the finance minister was that we need multiple tax slabs because all commodities cannot be taxed at one rate. So some commodities taxed at 4%, some commodities as 20%. The reason being that the tax as such should be proportional to the commodity. Like a luxury good cannot be taxed at the same rate as example given also of Hawaii chappals. So that's what he said. So that is why different tax slabs are essential. You cannot deny that. And the third argument which was put forth is that need for the levy of additional cesses. So this we have already seen earlier. Additional cesses have been imposed on the topmost slab. In addition to the GST tax rate, a cess would also be imposed on some of the commodities. These are called sin goods. We have already discussed all this, and this cess will be used to compensate the states in the first 5 years, as assured by the central government, that if there is any loss because of transition to GST, then they would be compensated. So this GST goods and services tax is subsuming a large number of taxes. You can see all of these mentioned here. So these all will come under GST now. So because of this transition, it happens that in the initial phases, some states may face a deficit in the tax collection. So that would be compensated for. So that has been assured. This is the cess imposed for that, to get the fund for that. How would the central government also assure them compensation? Then the next news item is Supreme Court bans sale registration of BS3 vehicles from April 1. So this also we saw 2 days back, that the vehicle manufacturers were saying that they should be allowed to sell the BS3 compliant vehicles which they have presently, which they have been manufacturing. So there is no law stopping them from manufacturing them till 31st of March. So from 1st April, BS4 fuel will be there. BS4 compliance starts off in the country all over, right? So till 31st March, BS3 is there. So they have been manufacturing BS3 vehicles, and they say whatever stock we have of BS3 compliant vehicles, because when BS4 fuel is being used, even engines have to be modified according to that to ensure that emissions go down. So they have still BS3 compliant engines, and they say that we should be allowed to sell this stock. So there are around some 8.7 lakh some vehicles which they have, they say, and these should be 8.24 lakh such vehicles which are there, commercial vehicles, two-wheelers, three-wheelers. So they want this to be sold off. The stock should be allowed to be sold off. Earlier government also said that we are in favor, central government said we are in favor of these vehicle manufacturers, because earlier too this has been done. When BS2 was brought in throughout the country, BS3 was brought in throughout the country in 2005, 2010, this was allowed. That the stock which is there was allowed to be sold off even after going to the higher norm. So fuel emission norm. So this was expected this year too. This year means this time too, but the Supreme Court has stated no, there will be a complete ban on sale and registration of BS3 vehicles from 1st April 2017, because BS4 fuel compliance has to start. So why should there be a leeway given to this argument of the vehicle manufacturers? The Supreme Court says, what were you waiting for? Because it was already known BS4 compliance will start from 1st April 2017, from 2010 onwards. Then why did you not ready yourself for it? It's not a sudden decision. So they should have readied themselves for this rather than waiting till 31st March and then asking for time as such for these vehicles which are there in stock. So the Supreme Court says the health of the citizens is more important than the commercial interests of the automobile industry. So this is what is the argument put forth. They say that this is a small minuscule number of vehicles, 8.24 lakh vehicles. There are much more vehicles which are there already as such out. So this is very minuscule amount as such, and this is because of the own fault of the vehicle manufacturers that they decided to sit back and not take proactive action. So this is what has been highlighted too. Also for this, we have seen earlier central government had said that BS3 engines can also be upgraded to BS4. But of course, it would be an added cost for these vehicle manufacturers now. So that is there. Plus, also another expenditure which has to be done. Engines also have to be upgraded and fuel also has to be upgraded for the fuel emission norms BS4. So these refineries have already spent money and have upgraded the fuel. So BS4 fuel is available. So BS4 engines should also be there. So you can see that this BS4 engines require that sulfur content of the fuel they use should be less than 50 parts per million. And BS3 engines can run on 350 parts per million fuel also. So this fuel has also already been made up to the mark for BS4 by the oil refineries in the country. So now BS4 engines should also be there and pollution would come down. So it says that emissions would come down. For new trucks, it can dip by 80%. So 80% reduction in pollution by new trucks. For cars, it can be up to 50%. So this is the benefit of bringing in BS4 norms. Then the next news item is Westinghouse files for bankruptcy. So we already discussed this 2 days back. Westinghouse, this is US nuclear company which has been acquired by Toshiba, a Japanese nuclear company. So now Westinghouse, it was expected it is going to file for bankruptcy. So this has been done now, and Toshiba will have to incur these losses now because it is the owner. So it will be $4.3 billion losses for Toshiba now. So we have already seen that Westinghouse was planning 6 nuclear reactors in the country in Andhra Pradesh. And this would be sourced from Westinghouse and will be built by NPCIL, Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited. So that will be there, built by both together. And now this has not been gone ahead because one thing was that the critical components in the nuclear reactors are coming from Japan, and India-Japan nuclear deal has yet not been finalized. The executive, the Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, has cleared it, but the legislature, the Diet in Japan, Diet is the name for the legislative body in Japan, has not finalized it. So it has to clear it too. Then Indo-Japan nuclear deal will come into effect. So pending that, we cannot have these nuclear reactors coming in. Now with Westinghouse filing for bankruptcy, again the entire deal stands dangling whether it would go ahead or not. Also earlier we had seen that Toshiba had also announced that it was not keen on going ahead with these new nuclear reactors being set up in this region. Then the next news item is CEO plans to go under to stop pollution. So these are 5 chosen CEOs of Technopark in Thiruvananthapuram. They will participate in the first ever undersea conference of CEOs. So they would be using scuba divers and would be descending 5 to 6 meters into the Arabian Sea, and they would here have a meeting. And in this meeting, they would of course use sign language for communication, hand gestures, slates would be used for communication, and they are pledging here to sign a memorandum, protect the ocean and marine life. So they have twin objective. They're tackling or at least highlighting marine pollution and global warming. So these two issues are being highlighted here, and they are going to have this Ocean Love campaign launched. So this is the event here. So from climate change perspective, this is an initiative taken here. Then the next news item is early shift to renewables needed to save climate. IRENA. So this IRENA is International Renewable Energy Agency. So this has said that we have to shift early. The world has to shift early to renewable sources of energy if we want to save the climate. Carbon emission reduction has to come forth. So this is being stated at Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue, which was held here. India itself is also committed under the Paris Climate Agreement that we would be targeting production of 175 gigawatts of power from renewable energy by 2022. So we also have a huge responsibility on us, and we also need to shift to renewables and increase our energy production from renewables. Here also, this body is also emphasizing on solar and wind energy to be used amongst the renewable forms. So it says that global carbon emissions can reduce by 70% by 2050 and completely phased out by 2060. So it is possible. Also, it says that it is important that we need to consider the demands or the problems of those who don't have energy access. So we are reducing carbon emissions, but those who are without electricity, without access to energy, power, have also to be focused on. So that's what distinction between developed, developing countries, and amongst these developing countries towards the have-nots is also being emphasized in this report. So it says focus should be on decarbonization of global energy system. So this, it says that global energy system accounts for almost 2/3 of greenhouse emissions. So this has decarbonization is important. It says if this is done, GDP would also increase and new jobs would be generated, because this is a complete new sector, renewable energy sector, which would be opened up. And of course, health benefits are there, air pollution would reduce. So they say renewable energy presently is only 24% of global power generation and 16% of primary energy supply. So this has to increase. It says it should be 80% of power generation and 65% of total primary energy supply by 2050. So this will help in ensuring decarbonization, that our carbon emissions go down. So this is there. It says that electric vehicles, liquid biofuel production should be emphasized on, because this will reduce carbon emissions. Also, it is emphasizing on buildings becoming energy efficient. Energy efficiency measures being brought in building constructions and buildings activities like electricity consumption, etc. This will also reduce carbon emissions. So this is the body. It's an intergovernmental organization founded in 2009 for sustainable use of renewable energy, headquartered in Abu Dhabi. The next news item is Supreme Court directs Center to prepare media guidelines for police briefings. So this is the Supreme Court asking the government to bring in fresh memorandum of police guidelines, that how they should have media briefings done, because the rights of the accused as well as the rights of the victims have to be upheld, and the sensitivity should be there towards their rights. There should be no prejudice during the trial as such. So earlier the memorandum which was provided by the center was in 2010. So now fresh memorandum is required. The Supreme Court says post the developments which have taken place, the arguments put forth before the court presently, and new points which have come out. Also earlier Supreme Court had given directions for framing guidelines on encounter cases also. So these such kind of guidelines being framed, such orders, directions are given by the Supreme Court to the center. So this is regarding that. Then the next news item is 5 new satellites this year to raise ISRO capability. So ISRO is planning to launch 5 national communication satellites. So these, the first one to be launched, GSAT 9, also called South Asia satellite, will be launched in first half of April. and there are 4 more in line. So you can see these are listed here. So this will be the first time that 5 satellites within a year's time frame will be communication satellites within a year's time frame would be launched. So this is important because we need to increase our infrastructure, space infrastructure, because these transponders which are there in these communication satellites, transponders means transmitters and responders. So communication requires this component. So these transponders are there in the country. We have 14 communication satellites. They provide 200 odd transponders equivalents, and we source 95 odd transponders from foreign satellites. So we need them for our DTH, direct to home broadcasters. So this is what we need, infrastructure to be improved, because this is used by broadcasters, telephone sector, internet services, businesses. They use these services, transponder services. So that is why we need more communication satellites, and these steps are being taken now. NGS will Mark II rocket, which we have successfully tested now. So this can put up to 2000 kg satellites in space. So this will also help in improving our communication satellite launching. So GSAT-9 will also go on GSLV Mark II such rocket as such. And the other 4 which are there in line, you can see GSAT-19, this will be internet user friendly satellite. Then GSAT-17, 6A. 6A is like GSAT-6, will be used by defense forces, communication satellite for defense forces. GSAT-11, which is 5000 plus kg satellite. So this is ISRO's largest satellite as such. And GSAT, and also it is said GSAT 17 and 11 would be launched by India. It would be launched on European Ariane launcher, French Guiana in South America, from where this launch takes place. So because we can't launch such heavy satellites, we don't have those capabilities. So that is why we use Ariane launcher of European Space Agency, and this is done in South America. So this is regarding that. Then the next news item is data jugglery over arms purchases. So this is a question being raised because we know India is the largest importer of arms and has been so for recent years. We are emphasizing on made in India in defense, but we have not achieved success to the extent as shown by statistics. So the data which has been put forth before the parliament presently, the defense ministry says in the last 2 financial years, India has spent a major share of its capital expenditure on procurement from Indian vendors. So it says 62% of capital expenditure was spent on Indian vendors. So this means a major chunk is spent on from India. We are sourcing from India, then we are not importing a large amount of defense. So how is this possible when it is internationally known to, this is Stockholm International Peace Research Institute data, which is also put forth that India is the largest importer of military equipment in the world. It accounts for 13% of total global arm imports. So this is data between 2012 and 2016. So we import more than China and Pakistan too. So then how do we have such high figures for capital expenditure spent in India? So a clarification being given here, and official says that this figure may have come because the spending is done on Indian vendors, but Indian vendors may be sourcing components from foreign countries. So that means we are paying the Indian vendor. The Indian vendor may be sourcing it from foreign countries. Some components, like they're giving examples to, like for the BrahMos satellite, components coming from foreign entities, then these private vendors source from them. Tejas is an indigenously made fighter, but a large number of components of it are to be imported. So those are not accounted for. So maybe because of this, the figure has gone so high that 62% is spent on Indian vendors. So such is the data jugglery which is done, is been highlighted. Statistical jugglery, it is said. The next news item is Theresa May triggers UK exit from EU. So we already know about Brexit. We have discussed it quite often. So this triggering of Article 50 of Lisbon Treaty has finally been done. The UK executive wanted to do it, but UK judiciary said that you can't do it unless the parliament authorizes it. The bill was introduced for Brexit in the parliament, which it was a small bill just for the sake of approval, and then it has been passed by the houses, and now UK exit has formally been initiated. Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty of EU has been triggered. So this is the first time that any country is triggering Article 50 to leave European Union. That is there. The entire history is also given here of how Britain became a member of EU and now finally it is exiting. So when it wanted to become a member in 1963, French President then Charles de Gaulle, he said that Britain is trying to be a Trojan horse, means an enemy sending its representative in the country. So it's an ally of US, and US will be trying to control Europe through UK. So that is why UK's entry was actually vetoed by France. And then finally British was allowed in 1973 to become part of European Economic Community. And in 1975 it held the first referendum. UK held its referendum over EEC membership, European Economic Community membership, and people voted in favor. 67% voted in favor. So that is how it became part of this European Economic Community and European Union later. But then it has not participated in the European monetary system. Euro is not the currency. UK has its own pound sterling. Also, it did not want to be part of Schengen agreement too. That is the common visa which can be there for various European countries. So for UK, you have to take a separate visa. So it stayed out of these provisions also. So EU wanted to consolidate, but Britain was not ready for it. So it is increasing its powers too. But this is not what UK wants. So finally, now on the issue of immigrants, the European immigrant crisis, in which European Union mandated that how immigrants have to be distributed. Various countries have to have their intake and take some immigrants, but UK was not ready for this too. It does not want to accept immigrants. So the entire European immigrant crisis, this West Asian nationals, especially Syrians, they entered into the European countries through the Mediterranean Sea. So this crisis finally led to the trigger, and then Prime Minister David Cameron said that the referendum would be held whether Britain wants its membership of EU or not. And this referendum was held in June 2016 and it voted in favor, 52% voted in favor of leaving European Union, and that's why Brexit has been now triggered. Then the next news item is China to fund local elections in Nepal. So this is the first time that in Nepal, elections, local level elections which are scheduled to be held now will be financially supported by China. So the PM, Prime Minister of Nepal, Pushpa Kamal Dahal, Prachanda as he is famously known as, a former Maoist who handed arms, who laid down arms and joined the politics because Nepal became a democracy around a decade ago. So the monarchy was ended, the Maoists also laid down arms, and now government, a unity government was formed, a constitution is being prepared, and now finally constitution done. The Nepal elections are being scheduled, and this first democratic elections which are to be held, China is going to fund them. So this is the irony that a country which is not a democracy is funding democratic elections. And Nepal has also accepted China's proposal that it would, and it is ready to participate in OBOR, One Belt One Road initiative of China, means infrastructure development here which would be done in the region. So this is China-Nepal relations. This is important because India-Nepal relations are very strong. So this triangle, you should know about the relations as such. Then the next news item is EU-China rally around Paris deal. So this is actually around a step taken by Donald Trump, US President, who has now assured that the coal industry in USA would be supported and there will not be curbs put on them. So this was his campaign promise and has brought this into effect. So Barack Obama, the former president of USA, had brought out a plan which proposed deep cuts in greenhouse gas emissions from US. So this is in line with implementing the International Paris Agreement. So this now undoing of these steps already taken will result in greenhouse gas emissions, carbon emissions, and that would not be good for the world as such. So now EU and China are emphasizing on sticking to the Paris Agreement so that world temperatures could come down, because in the last 3 consecutive years, 3 years in a row, we have had record high temperatures, world temperatures. So that is why steps are required. Global warming is taking place because there are many people who still don't believe in global warming because of human effect. So human activities are resulting in temperatures increasing, global average temperatures increasing. That is not accepted. They consider it to be because of nature. So there have been evidences given, and that is showing that it is human activities which are resulting in greenhouse gas emissions, which are resulting in global warming. So this scientific data is also rejected. So such you can see in Donald Trump too. Also there are allegations made on him that there is conflict of interest, because he is a businessman basically. So he has business interests also, and he is the president of USA, who should work for climate change also. So that conflict of interest aspect is also there, which is highlighted. Then the next news item is CBIs one registration for equity commodities brokers. So this is in line with the reforms which SEBI is bringing in, because for equities means shares. So shares, regulation of shares, stock market, stock exchange is done by Securities and Exchange Board of India, SEBI. But for commodities, earlier the regulator which was there was Forward Markets Commission. So commodity trading, which you should know about, is that trading is done in as such, and that value of that as such would be based on the commodity value. So those are called commodity exchanges. So commodity exchanges regulator has now been merged with SEBI. So it's under SEBI only. This was done in September 2015. So that is why reforms are in line how to regulate both, and now the brokers here can have one registration. So for both equity and commodities, there will be one registration as such. So this is one more reform in that line which has been brought out. So that is being put forth here. So SEBI, after having Forward Market Commission merged with it, it has brought in regulations. It has tightened trading and surveillance norms for commodity exchanges too. So commodity trading we have discussed a lot. I will link a video with this too, so that you can understand exactly what is commodity trading too. At the end of the video, you will have a link to a former video where this has been discussed. Then the next news item is TB vaccine trial on adults begins in June. So this is Pune-based Serum Institute of India Private Limited. This is beginning the phase 2 and 3 of vaccine trial for tuberculosis. So this new TB vaccine which has been developed is VPM 1002. So this is a recombinant BCG vaccine. So BCG vaccine which is given, it is only a recombinant of this. So this gene change which has been done, it will result in, so it contains a gene that will be better recognized by the immune system. So now phase 1 trial has already been done, and it has assured the safety of this vaccine. Also it has been done on newborns in South Africa. That was phase 2A trial. So here also it has confirmed the safety of the vaccine even for these children, newborns who have not been exposed to HIV. So this has already been done, and now we are having this TB vaccine having its phase 2 trials undertaken. So if it is successful, it will result in first time that a vaccine has been developed for tuberculosis. Then the next news item is a unique Anaval PD ritual. So this is to catch the tail of the elephant. So this ritual is held annually in this Sri Balasubramania Swami temple in Kerala. So in an area of 100 square meters, the elephant is moved and the devotees chase him to catch his tail. So this is held every year in the Malayalam month of Meenam. And this, they say, is symbolic of the belief about the childhood pranks of God siblings Ganesha and Balasubramanian. So this is being done as a ritual. So again, with respect to animals involved in rituals, this is also in use. Anaval PD. And the last news item is Japan scientists typhoon turbine. So this Japanese scientist Atsushi Shimizu, he has developed a turbine which can use typhoon for production of energy. So energy generation from typhoon. So typhoon are these strong winds which blow, which cause devastation. So they can be used. So this is the bladeless wind turbine which has been developed by him, which will result in generation of electricity. So it takes advantage of the idea of Magnus effect. So Magnus effect is a force that sees air curve when passing by a spinning object. So this turbine would be spinning. So just like a football and it is spinning, air curves around it. So that typhoon, it will be able to withstand a typhoon too. The air would curve around it and it will be used for generation of electricity. So this is what has been developed, and this will result in Japan, which does not have natural resources for generation of electricity. Like it is not coal rich, it is not having fossil fuels. So it had developed nuclear energy. the Fukushima nuclear disaster in 2011, which was the worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl in 1986. So post that, the nuclear reactors have come down, and now there is shift being done to fossil fuel now, which is more polluting too, and of course costly as well for Japan. So this use of renewable energy, solar energy, wind energy is also increasing, and this use of typhoons to generate electricity is a novel initiative which has been taken. So this is in news. Also, typhoons are same. What we call cyclones in India, they are called typhoons. So depending on where they are originating, there are different names given to them. So the terminology is different, but it's the same. So this is important for Japan, and this development has been done now. So important in context of now Japan trying to revive its nuclear reactors, and people are protesting against such an initiative in view of the nuclear accident which took place because of the tsunami in 2011 in Fukushima. So that is it. Thank you.